Christian nationalism. Who is Christ? What is a nation? Talking about Christian nationalism is a lot like talking about authoritarianism. Not because they are both bad things or because they are both good things. It is because they are both vague things. I had this argument with a constitutionalist recently, wherein I was pointing out that the Constitution of the United States has no other purpose but to consolidate what, in the case of King George, was called by the same authors tyrannical power. I said that if we were going to compare the government of the United States as formed by the Constitution to another government, we should not compare it to the fascist governments in the 1930s, partly because few people have an accurate understanding of that highly propagandized time period, or to the fantasy in people's mind of some evil dictator, but we should compare it to what the founders of the government in 1789 were opposing. On one hand, the Articles of Confederation, which granted way more freedom and way less power. On the other hand, various forms of monarchy, wherein a man could hunt freely in the Appalachian mountains without worrying about particular seasons. The response I got was that republic and democracy were obviously less tyrannical than authoritarianism. What is authoritarianism? A government in which some man has authority? It is too vague. It's a buzzword. I said, let's talk about monarchy. He responded with the word authoritarianism. A similar thing happens with the word Christian and the word nationalism. Let's talk the latter first. On Substack, a woman left a fascinating reply to her comment. I later found this reply, but I can't switch screens very easily. I unfortunately cannot find it, so from memory, you will have loyalty to something. You will believe in something. You will identify by something. That's the problem. What is it? If it is not nation, is it globalism, tribalism, factionalism? If it is nationalism, do you want it to be an immoral nation or a moral nation? Nationalism is inevitable. Would you rather a Christian nation or a pagan nation? I agree with this in a lot of ways, but I criticized it. I said, what kind of Christian are we talking about? That's the problem. I'm about to watch a debate between my friend, an agnostic, who is sincerely concerned about the morality espoused in the Bible as it relates to genocide and slavery, because the Bible God at one point commands genocide after releasing the commandment against murder, and he deals with slavery a few times. And so people are genuinely concerned, especially people who don't believe in the Bible as being authoritative, are genuinely concerned about the morality that the Bible teaches, and they should be. Anyway, so it's a debate between him and whatever a full preterist is. A quick search says that a full preterist believes every prophecy in the Bible has already been fulfilled. Does that mean that this earth is all we have and we have nothing to look forward to at the end of time? Even if we say heaven exists, does this grinding modern society represent the final goal of all civilization? If so, then I understand why all the atheists hate Christianity and all the Christians think this is the Antichrist time. You probably understand my point by now. I will give you my opinion on Christian nationalism, and then I will give you my opinion on what the solution is to everyone's problems. Christian nationalism is marketing. That is all it is. Now, what is marketing? Marketing is the art by which a comedian takes something true and useful for life and makes money off of it. He convinces you to desire it, and then he convinces you that he has the solution. Is this bad? Not necessarily. If it is something you should desire, such as justice or another virtue, then he is instructing the ignorant. If he provides the genuine solution without mixing in some poison like exploiting the poor, then he is doing a good work. In the case of Christian nationalism, it is something we should desire. We want a society to live in that has a standard moral code that is not up for debate. That is what people mean when they say Christian. But my agnostic friend has a very good point. The morality in the Bible, by the way, there's more than one morality in the Bible, just so you understand. But there is the Ten Commandments, what most people are usually referring to. The morality in the Bible, even the Ten Commandments, is not fitting for our current society. Why? Because nobody agrees on what they mean. If they did, then we probably could unite enough that even the agnostics and atheists could be ignored. But because they don't, God provides the agnostics and atheists to push us until we really acknowledge what we are overlooking. Let us take the first commandment. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. What does that mean? Everyone thinks they know, but then they make stupid arguments like this one. Muslims worship Allah, not God. Muslims worship an all-powerful creator God who is one and made the universe by himself and has absolute control over everything that happens in it. That is a decent description of the Christian concept of God, as I pointed out in my debate on the topic. Mohammedanism, in its inception, was considered by all the Christians as a heresy, not as a new pagan religion. Christianity is much closer to Mohammedanism than it is to Judaism, as many people point out. And I can go on about this topic. I'll tell you that the debate that I had, I'm a Roman Catholic, the debate that I had was about the Christian concept of God, and I included in my definition the Christians that believe God is not a Trinity, the anti-Trinitarians. Because they are Christian, they call themselves Christian. That's the problem, is it's not a very specific term. So, and people should recognize that if they're going to advocate for it. Now, both the Muslim and the Jew says that the first commandment makes Christianity illegal. The anti-Trinitarian responds that Christ is not God. The rest of the Christians devolve into chaos, arguing about the Trinity for around 1500 years. So should we desire a Christian nation? The correct answer is, what in the world does Christian nation mean? I do not want to try your patience. I want to offer my solution, but I will just say in passing that the word nation is not so clear-cut either. And I linked an article I wrote years ago about nation from a younger creationist perspective, and basically talking about race, nation, ethnicity, and the difference between those terms, and basically the fact that race and racism basically it comes from evolutionary theory. That's where it comes from. It's the idea that it's racist to begin with. So, they think, for instance, Charles Darwin, an Englishman, thinks that the Irish and black people are closer to apes. He literally thinks that. He's the one that argued about it and made it a science. So that's where racism comes from. The young earth creationist perspective, you have Noah, who's got 3 sons, and those are the 3 races, if you want to call it, but they're all related. So they call a nation. Anyways, not to go off on that. In conclusion, the push for Christian nationalism is marketing because it is contained in the Apatarchy's will for us. It is likely only around in order to brew chaos and division, as anything that comes out is a widespread topic. Apatarchy, by the way, is a great term used by my friend, who's the best comedian I know, the best philosopher I know. You can find him on Substack, Thamus, Thamus, and the Semantic Apocalypse. And he talks about buzzwords, and how to communicate in English, which is a difficult task. Anyone pushing for it should try to be much more specific and define their terms very clearly. I would recommend using different terms, such as Catholic village, because then you realize that you're actually dividing people into camps, which if you do that peacefully, it's fine. But Catholic village is what I would talk about rather than Christian nationalism. I will also point out that I am in both camps and can view the left and the right pretty clearly at the grassroots through platforms such as Discord. When Mr. Kirk was shot and killed, God rest his soul, I saw uneasiness and hesitation on the left immediately, that day, and the next day, and the next day. I saw combativeness immediately on the right, which was centered around an accusation that the left had killed him, immediately, on that day, and the next day, and the next day. Before we knew anything, I saw people posting videos saying, this is war against the left because they killed Charlie Kirk, which is an insane accusation. Because then you're like against half the country with violence. It's just, you should be a little more cautious than that. The solution for everybody's problems, as promised. I am a pragmatic man. My wife recently posted on social media a little joke that all she wanted to do was show off her homemade clothing, and everyone was busy arguing about politics and religion. People commented saying that she had too much privilege because she could ignore the arguments. Anyone who knows us knows why that is laughable, because we're poor and we have been very unprivileged and continue to be so. And that's actually what she was talking about. The truth is the opposite. When a man has privilege or success, he finds time to argue about politics and religion. Just so you know, I actually just read about that on a Catholic trans person's Substack. She was talking about that the ones with privilege should speak publicly about politics and religion, basically. So that everyone recognizes that. When a man has privilege or success, he's the one who finds time to argue about politics and religion. When he loses his job, when he struggles to pay his bills, when he's worried about losing his family, all he can think about is money and material goods. Why is that? Think about how much you spend your hours every week. How much time goes into politics? How much time goes into religion? How much time goes into making money? A man will mention being Christian once or twice during a working day and feel like a hero. Meanwhile, he is still pouring a hard 8 hours, not counting his commute, not counting all the prep work to get out the door, and all the unwinding time after the day is over, which is when he goes to argue about politics and religion most of the time because he's unwinding. All that time going into literally generating money and nothing else. Well, I have a good job. I don't know what you're doing all day, but I am doing something important. Do you receive a paycheck? Can I ask you, why is it that this important work you're doing that makes such a difference, why is it translated into paper money? Worse, into digits on the screen. How come that is the measure by which we hold our labor? Well, isn't that what everyone does? Why? Why does everyone do it? Did you know that this is not how it's been throughout all of history? When people say they lived on $1 a day 100 years ago, what they don't tell you is this, that they didn't need dollars. They didn't need dollars to get food. They didn't need dollars to have a house. They didn't need dollars to have clothing. They had to manage things. They had to do economics and manage the household, which is what economics means. It doesn't mean managing money. It means managing the household because there's other things besides money. In order to have food, they thought about dirt. They had to manage their dirt. In order to have clothing, they thought about animals. In order to have lodging, they thought about their family, because that's where those things came from, not from money. You had a house because your father had a house. You had clothing, and you had to be on good terms, or your father might kick you out of the house. And when you grew up and got married, he'd give you a house, or your wife's father might give you a house. That's literally where your house came. He built it with his bare hands. It's been thousands of years you've had this house. Which is why the Bible says be very nice to a stranger, because they don't have this thing that the average person has and even has a right to expect. Is a place to live and have a family. You manage sheep to get clothing, or manage cotton fiber or whatever. These things that are close to God, not digits on a screen. That's where your necessities came from. That's what economics means. And then if you had excess, maybe you translate it into hard currency, gold, so that you could have what wealth was in order to pass on to your children, this secure wealth, not this liquid cash that changes value. That's what everything I'm doing on Substack is about, this issue of how people's lives are wrecked because of economics. The point is simple. Economics controls us. The government does not control us. Religion does not control us. Economics controls us. The government floats over the top of things to swoop in every now and then and make life a lot harder for some individual. Most of the time, our interaction with the government is paying our taxes and avoiding fines on the speedway. It is economics. When the government wants to punish us, they do so through economics. That's what they do. That's what matters, not politics. Economics. Is that godly? No. We live in a godless society. Yes, we should not be so concerned about economics. Why are we? Because we're forced to be. So I would love to spend all my time talking to people about religion, but I can't, because I have to pay bills. They have to pay bills. They can't even know Christ because they don't have time to, because they have to pay bills. They're enslaved. That's the problem. So when Father Ripperger says, who I love and whatnot, God bless him. But when he says that we've already lost the battle when everything we talk about in politics is economics, yes, we have lost the battle. We have lost ground. They own us. So the way to fight the battle now is in the area where they have beaten us, which is economics. Politics and religion are just a distraction for discord. That's all it is. Fight economics. And that's a religious take. Our Lord Jesus Christ himself cared about the poor people and took care of their problems. He didn't preach to them first. He healed them if they were bound. And he talked about this a lot. And he was very upset with the Pharisees for doing the exact opposite. Anyways, religion is a little bit better than politics. Religion controls us once a week. And then when the workday is over, in your evenings and weekends, that's when you get to be a Christian. People feel like they need to answer to something good. They think about Christ and they evaluate their day. That is why they do a good job at work before they start spreading the gospel there. They do not want to give Christ a bad name. Why are they there anyways? Why are they at their job? Is it because of Christ? No. It's because of economics. It is a godless thing that we have to do. If they need money to pay the bills. If it were not for that, they would have no fear of giving Christ a bad name at some place where they would never be anyways, doing something they would never do anyways. Do you know where they would probably be? They would be with their sons and with their families, who, by the way, need the gospel. Again, the solution. I am a pragmatist. I have only now shifted your attention to a different area. I have not given you a solution. Why is that? It is unfortunate to tell you that the solution is very complicated and very relative. There is not one approach to it. No, money controls people tyrannically and individually because it is a counterfeit of God. It's an idol. It's become an idol. I mean, it has its own legitimate purpose. You know, the free market is okay. Capitalism is not, because it's a idolization of capital. Of money. It becomes capital. It knows us personally. Money does. It takes everything we do and translates it into dollars and cents. Therefore, the only solution is for us to get to know each other. When I know more about you, I can tell you what we can do together, cooperatively, not competitively. In the meantime, if we were going to argue about politics and religion, if we're going to have competition, let's do it honestly for entertainment. I'm an apologist. I'm happier and happier arguing with atheists. I go on their channels and I try sincerely to get them clicks. I want them to make money. That's because they are real people and not corporate overlords. If you want to support me, you can do so in a couple of different places. Give, Send, Go, for instance. Try to link that. If you want to follow my apologetical work, you can do that on YouTube, where I am actually spreading the gospel because it makes money. If you want to follow my economic work, you should be on Substack. You can also follow for my book, The Village Economy, on Instagram. That's what the Instagram's about. If you want to get in touch with me, you can email me, taurusnecros@gmail.com. Or you can leave a comment anywhere you see this. I do not charge people to teach them how to start their own business. If anybody wants, I'm not an official business coach or anything like that, but I've done a lot. If anyone wants to do that, I highly recommend it. I've written a few articles on that. I'm putting together a course. I'm not right now trying to be a business coach, although I have noticed that a lot of people who are doing that kind of thing, life coach, business coach, don't actually have much experience, whereas I actually do. So maybe it would be legitimate for me to do that. I don't know. I've helped people do things because I'd rather them do it than a corporation do it, and then I usually use their service or I promote it or whatever because it's just better. It's better for my community. And so I think it's easier for us all to work together cooperatively if you have your own business instead of working a job where you can't think about your neighbors. You know what I mean? So maybe look at my articles like you should start your own business. God bless you. I know that trust and integrity are important, which is why I prefer to talk to you individually, and I'm happy to do that if you have the time to do that. But nobody has time and nobody has money because of usury. which is why I'm fighting usury with all my heart, with everybody I can find. And if you want to support me with your time, if you have any extra, please contact me individually. If you have to send me money to support me, that's fine. We'll find the least usurious way as possible, and you'll see a link. There are three ways that we can do this, or there are three ways that I'm working on right now. There's one bottom-up approach. I'm talking quickly for the people who don't have time. And that involves creating insular economies, which is what you will find out when you contact me individually with your extra time. That's the most important. I'm doing that locally and I'm doing that electronically, which is where you come in. The other two are top down. So you can find a user, you can cause them to repent, you can tell them about Jesus Christ, and then he should fix everything. And so we won't suffer as much. Or you can pass Jubilee laws, which you don't need to find the usurer to do that. It makes usury illegal. It benefits everybody who is struggling, and it will punish users or anybody who commits usury. So, which is not the people you think. Nobody knows who they are. So don't worry about you being affected by that. But I'm doing the first one. I'm researching the other two, and I'm glad to hear your thoughts.
Edited by Lil Lathos.